Hi everyone! Hello, hello! Ghost Smoke! Thank you so much for the 1,000 biddies! Hello everyone! Hello Mr. Homer! Hello Anlock! Hello Ghost Smoke! Yeah, and I saw Grapes as well! Yeah, there's Grapes. Hello Grapes! For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Digishell, the Tamagotchi VTuber, and I'm here today with a really special guest. Dear guest, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Warehouse Radio. I am a DJ, a music curator, a Y2K enthusiast, and this is actually my first time I've ever been interviewed, let alone interviewed by a VTuber, so I'm excited to dive into all of this.
And I'm really excited to have you here. I'm really amazed that it all turned out this way, and I can finally interview you. I had my eyes on you for quite a while for that. So I'm happy we now finally come together to sit down and just kind of discuss the Y2K Revival and what it means to be a DJ.
Yeah. I've been following your travels as a VTuber through you and through Grapes as well. So I'm happy to finally be on here, honestly.
For those of you that don't know, Grapes VTuber is my precious best friend and wife. Not really, but you know, if I could, if it would be a gacha game, I'd give her the promise ring item, definitely. So she's really dear to me. And Warehouse, I have a first question for you.
Okay.
So you're a DJ, right?
Yes.
How does one get to be a DJ? Like, how is DJing different from like making like beats in FL Studio or something like that? Like, how does it work?
Honestly, getting into DJing can kind of stem from anywhere. For me, I back in like when I was in high school and early college, I was making just these sort of kind of mixtapes, or just like compiling CDs for friends and stuff. And you get into this kind of you really start to enjoy the curation aspect of it, of like curating songs and seeing how people react to it, and then that sort of evolved when I went to college. I would go to some parties and people would want me to help out with kind of planning the music for certain parties and things like that. I didn't actually get into physical DJing with actual hardware and equipment until um, I'd say 2019 was when I bought my first deck. And kind of from there, it was just sort of trial and error of, learning the equipment as I went and curating different tracks and things like that. And in terms of how it's different, I mean, I'd say at its core, DJing is you are playing music for other people, and that's extremely broad because it could be, music that's already made. It could be music that's already made combined with your own music that you've produced, or it could be strictly just music that you've produced and you're playing it for an audience. So it that can kind of come from anywhere, but I'd say the curation aspect is probably the most important part of DJing and what makes it kind of different from strictly just producing and things like that.
I see. I kind of imagined it to be something like that. But I was quite surprised to just kind of hear that, the programs that you use and all that is like totally different. Like that is something I didn't expect. I thought like FL Studio and like Ableton were like the only two music programs. I don't know why I thought that, but that was just kind of my perceptions of it.
Oh yeah, and it can be done. I've seen people use like DAWs and other production softwares for DJing, and it's very wild to see someone do that. But yeah, DJing software is almost sort of its own separate like type of music software.
Oh, I see. So that's also like a totally separate skill that you are learning, basically. Like that kind of like program literacy is a bit separate from that. So when you make a mix, you set out, you make many amazing mixes. Lots of them, by the way, you guys can find on Warehouse Media's SoundCloud.
That's right.
Yeah. Warehouse, yeah. No, it's all right. I want to know, Warehouse, what does your creative process look like when you make a mix?
I still haven't fully mastered the ability of being able to like make mixes on the fly. A lot of the mixes I do are, I'd say, kind of premeditated in terms of I do a lot of the curation and trial and error of finding out what songs work with each other and, what parts of those songs work with each other, and kind of doing run-throughs and practice mixings like weeks ahead of time before any sort of due date that I need a mix done for, whether it be URL or if I know I have an IRL show coming up. So lots of kind of run-throughs and trial and error, and then really kind of polishing kind of the rough parts and transitions of a mix. Just because I'm purely just a mixer, I don't produce any music. So a lot of what I put my energy into with a mix is kind of making it feel seamless, making really nice like transitions in terms of like emotions or just general energy. And as much as I would love to be able to just like crank out mixes like that within 1 or 2 days, it definitely takes me, I'd say, 2 weeks minimum to put out a set that I really enjoy.
So you're basically using something like a mood board almost when trying to approach this. So you have like a particular mood or, I guess, feeling you want to like get across, like a certain vibe. Like there's like faster paced tracks that probably work together really well and slower paced ones that, complement each other really well. And you're kind of compiling that. Like you take your time, you said you take a couple weeks, and that's how you make like the perfect mix by just kind of seeing what works best together.
Yeah, because sometimes, like, whether the event is online or in person, it'll have some sort of theme or just sort of, some sort of general, like, selection of genres that the other performers are choosing. So I have to take that into account when I'm initially curating out tracks. And usually what I do is I just go through my entire music library and dump a bunch of tracks into a single playlist that I think would work well together. And then I sort of just kind of go down the line and see what songs work with each other and, get rid of songs that don't really fit in the mix or could be used for something else later. and then eventually whittled it down to whether like a 30-minute, 45-minute, or an hour-long set. But yeah, just basically just going through a giant pile of music and then curating it to whatever I need for that specific event.
But that means you must have like a huge library of songs, right? In order to just kind of like whip things up and just kind of see, you know, what works together. Like you must have either a huge musical memory to like recognize, you know, what would fit together from like thousands of songs, or you must have some really good like curated playlists that you can kind of like, you know, take inspiration upon.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little of both. I mean, I say that I have a lot of music saved on my laptop or like, you know, on playlists on my own SoundCloud or Spotify's or whatever. But I say that, but then I meet someone that has like triple the amount of music saved and curated. But yeah, that definitely, I'd say one helpful thing is definitely kind of divvying out your tracks based on genre or BPM or however you really want to specify it. Because that just makes the process easier, because instead of having to go through, you know, thousands of tracks at any given time, I can just be like, okay, this set needs a bunch of this type of music, and I can pull songs directly from a certain playlist.
And I mean, there's also like the boon of like curating and saving music that YouTube is so difficult with us now. But there are a lot of uploads from like more obscure songs that get taken down nowadays and that are harder to find. Like personally, I noticed that. I have like a playlist with 900 songs, or it used to be 900 songs, and now it's like 650 or something. Like a big chunk of the music I listen to is unavailable nowadays.
Yeah, that's one thing. Just for anyone listening, if you find a song you like and it's posted online, just assume that it might disappear at some point. So if you can figure out a way to, you know, if it has a download enabled, or if you can like reach out to the artist and get it downloaded or something like that, definitely do it. Because I mean, it's like you said, I have a bunch of playlists on SoundCloud that I use for just kind of backlogging and curation, and they max out at 500, but you know, every couple of weeks I'll check them again and there'll be like 10, 15 songs missing because they eventually just got deleted. So nothing is permanent on the internet, or at least in terms of music. So definitely try and hang on to some tracks that you really like, because you never know when they're going to get taken down somewhere.
Analog says, I always do that. At least 200 songs on my PC download. Yeah, I do that too. It's quite funny because, like sometimes an artist just like nukes their entire catalog. Like sometimes people, you know, stop the hobby or just delete their YouTube account. And then every single thing, like especially with like older game soundtracks, if that stuff disappears, it's gonzo usually, if it's like a good quality upload. So that's definitely something you guys should save.
Yeah, sometimes they get nuked. On SoundCloud, I've noticed sometimes artists will just get hacked. Like, I mean, SoundCloud's cybersecurity is pretty piss poor. So sometimes, like, an artist you'll like will just get hacked, and like a bunch of their catalog will get taken away. I've had that happen a couple of times with people I follow, and you know, thankfully I had, you know, pre-saved and downloaded music that they made available. But you know, even then, there are some tracks that I've heard and I really enjoyed, but I will never be able to find them again because they were under some weird name or they just got deleted completely.
I think sometimes it's also just that people save their song, like especially on YouTube, there'll be like a song and it's titled like Midnight. And if you don't remember who made it, like you have no chance of finding a song with like such a generic name again, if you have like no idea who made it. And especially if it's like more obscure music, like good luck. YouTube filters by like most popular channels most of the time, that those are like first. So there's no chance of finding those again.
Yeah, that was probably my main gripe with SoundCloud, is that me and Grapes have talked about it before because we both avidly use SoundCloud, is that the search engine on SoundCloud is hyper specific. You pretty much have to spell the name of the song correctly to the letter for it to pull up the exact song you're looking for. But the problem is because SoundCloud is like definitely holds a lot of people from the underground scene, the way they title their tracks is so just kind of nuanced, or they use like kind of weird like wingdings typing that makes it almost impossible to search up. Or you'll hear a song and it'll be a remix of a song that you know, but the title is something completely different. So when you go to like look it up based on the part of the song you know, you're never gonna find it.
I had that happen to songs before as well. Like, I remember sometimes they also change the name, like in the future. Like, I remember there used to be this really nice song. The person that like uploaded it gave it a really cringe title. They titled it like, if you built Ardent for your ADC. So it was like a League of Legends kind of adjacent title.
Right.
And I remember like I had to find that like through just typing like, you know, e-girl songs, like League of Legends e-girl playlist, and just kind of like sifting through those. And then when I finally found the song, the artist has changed the name, and now it's just their Discord tag. Like now it's literally just, you know, hashtag 4 numbers and their name. And that was quite interesting when I found that again.
Oh yeah, and like I like the ability on SoundCloud to be able to go in and, you know, edit the description or the title or even the artwork. But if you find a song you like on SoundCloud, you pretty much just have to find a way to, you know, get it on your computer as quick as you can, because inevitably it'll change somehow.
Yeah, like 100%. Ghost Smoke says, oh, I just looked and I have 1,055 songs downloaded on my phone. Wow, your phone has a lot of space then for 1,055 songs. That's a lot. But yeah, and Analog brings up a good point with like demos and unreleased songs that are only like available for a limited time and then kind of disappear. Like I know a lot of demo releases or like B-sides, that kind of thing. Some of them are better than the actual song. Like I know a couple. I think some Weezer songs have really good B-sides where the actual song is a bit lackluster. And sometimes I think there's another band called The Last Dinosaur. They have really good demo releases, and then the actual song is always a bit more pop. Like you can tell, you know, the label probably said like, hey, make this a bit more marketable. Or at least it kind of feels like that for me. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's so many just unfinished tracks on SoundCloud too. And, you know, sometimes they'll end up getting completed. I've seen that happen a few times, but more often than not, even if you like that unfinished track, you should probably keep your eyes on it, because that's probably going to be the only version of that song that ever gets put out.
Well, that's true as well. Also, Ravel VT says, is that a fellow face on the screen? Well, I don't know if you mean me or if you mean Warehouse Radio. I called you Warehouse Media by mistake earlier. I'm really sorry. I spilled my spaghetti. But it's, of course, Warehouse Radio, and you can find their music on SoundCloud. Please listen to their mixes. They're so good. Yeah, really.
Yeah, Warehouse Media will be when I quote blow up and become a media conglomerate or something.
I'm ready for that. I'm 100% ready for that. For the Warehouse Media era. So my next question for you, Warehouse, is what's your favorite part of DJing? Like, what do you enjoy the most about it?
I think I guess the most, I guess in terms of like what feels nice in terms of versus productivity, is when you finally get a mix like really rolling without too much effort, or if you spent a lot of time and you finally got it to work. Because, you know, sometimes when you're mixing, like you could roll 3-4 songs into each other pretty easily without too much trouble, but then you kind of hit a speed bump of okay, how am I going to get this song to work with this song? How am I going to make these entire sections of this mix kind of vibe with each other? And then it's sort of like solving a giant puzzle just using audio, and once you finally start getting those pieces to fall into place, and then getting a mix finalized and then finally getting to perform it and seeing how people react to it, I'd say that's the most rewarding part of it for sure.
Well, I can definitely imagine. Like, I listened to your entire backlog pretty much, I think, on SoundCloud. Like, I just kind of let them run. Like, I have SoundCloud open at all times. I just kind of, click on the newest one, and then I kind of let them just, run backwards. And it's really interesting to kind of see that each person you collab with as well has like their really unique style. Like all the mixes sound so distinctly different from one another.
Oh yeah, that's why I like having those guests on, because when I initially started Warehouse, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put out a mix every single month, and that's how it's gonna work. And after 2 months, I was like, okay, I don't have the brain power to curate and put together a mix and stream a mix once a month. So that's when I started reaching out to other DJs and producers and performers for those guest mixes, because it keeps sort of a monthly schedule going, but it also kind of teaches me how to curate performers, and it also gives those performers a platform to show off their music or their mixes and things like that.
And I think that's also really nice because you're really giving, I guess, lesser known creators a chance to shine too. And it's just, at least for me, when I'm new to like a music genre, I always really appreciate when there's like kind of a gateway into more artists. Like I always like when people collab with each other or have like, guests on their mixes, because I'm like, oh, this is like a new person I can check out after this. Like this is the perfect gateway to kind of like broaden my catalog. Like,
Oh yeah.
personally, I really enjoy it. And Grapes asks, who's been your favorite person that you've had on Warehouse Radio? Pick a favorite.
That's a tough one.
Is it Nyadion?
I mean, it's hard not to say Nadion, honestly. They're humble and they won't admit that they're a good DJ and visual maker, but every time they've been on Warehouse, or if we've done a back-to-back mix with a different group like Millennium Strike or something, it always gets really good reception. So I think they need to understand that they are a good DJ.
They definitely need to get that into their head. Also, hi Johan! Hello. Pick someone else. Okay, if it wasn't Nyadion.
Honestly, it's pretty hard. I mean, I think I've had about 30 or so guests on, and honestly, some of them are kind of mind-boggling that they were even on there to begin with. I mean, Days God and Gum MP3 did a back-to-back, like, pretty much well into season 2, which was only like the second year I had been doing all this, and both of those guys are exploding right now. Another one that I really enjoyed was the N Cortex mix. That one was pretty fun. You and me talked a little bit about that one yesterday and how it ended up on Nick Robinson's like streams and stuff in the background. So, in terms of just mixes that I personally enjoyed, let's see. I mean, I'd say the Days God, the Gum MP3 one, the In Cortex. The 2 times I had Drip 133 on there was really nice. Reaching out to the Millennium Strike crew, the first time I hosted Taffa, that was a really great one because that was sort of their first time getting solo put on a roster for something.
Taffa is great.
Oh yeah, I think they just performed live at some big thing in Melbourne yesterday. So I don't know. I like them all just because like any artist I curate is an artist that I enjoy and want to be able to give that platform to. So everyone's that's been on, I like their mix pretty much equally to some degree for different reasons.
I think that's so wholesome. Like, I 100% get that, especially when I listen to them back to back. It's always just so nice to kind of hear how everyone develops their style like a different way, but it all comes together. Like, if you listen to them while you work or while you like exercise or cook, it's still like pretty natural. Like, there isn't like, you know, kind of like a tough break where I'm like, oh, this is very different from the others. Like, they're all really coherent, and they all kind of encapsulate that Y2K vibe really well, which is something I enjoy. Like, there are songs which, you know, I heard last when I was like a child, and then I will hear them in a mix and I'll be like, hell yeah, like, this is such a good song. Like, where has this been?
Yeah, that's part of the reason I went the route I did with just Warehouse as a whole, because I mean, at the beginning of it all, the reason I made Warehouse in general is because I was living in a place in the country where there was like no sort of electronic underground, like at all. It just didn't exist. And at the same time, that's when like the first beginnings of the, you know, the Y2K revival were happening. I'd say Y2K like culture as a whole now is sort of like on the down, but at the same time, like it's kickstarted a bunch of stuff which you can kind of see in the artists that I've curated, because some artists, you know, they'll go full nostalgia. They'll pick, you know, rave classics from the 90s, from the early 2000s, and you know, that's great. You know, that's the stuff I was a kid around with, so I enjoyed being able to hear that and curate that as an adult. But then you have artists that are not necessarily playing just that, but taking those songs and artists and, you know, just that culture of what it used to be back then and using it as an inspiration with their own abilities. And then you kind of get this whole new thing that's really nice. And I want to be able to highlight that too, because just focusing on the nostalgic aspects of Y2K and just music from that era, I mean, sure, there's a giant catalog of stuff we can work with, but eventually, you know, you're gonna run dry. So it's nice to be able to get performers and artists that use those as sort of a springboard into their own thing and giving them, you know, the stage to show it off.
I think if you really take like Y2K classics into account, usually it all becomes really samey. If you only like, if you're, you know, dead set on only kind of featuring that kind of thing. I find it quite interesting that you said you feel as if we are on like the lowering of like the Y2K revival, like we're slowly like phasing out of that. Would you say we're like approaching the 2010 revival, the tenors?
I think we've definitely, I think in terms of, I mean, we're still pretty high up. I think Y2K as a whole is probably one of the biggest revitalizations there's been, just in terms of how, you know, youth culture is like attaching to it. Because I remember when I was, you know, like in my younger teens, the new retro wave and like the vapor wave kind of things were, that was the big nostalgia revival at the time, and they were big at the time. I mean, you can still kind of see the ripple effects from those eras still in, you know, kind of pop culture and underground media now. But the Y2K one, it just exploded. I think it was just also a lightning in a bottle kind of effect, because it happened right around the time the COVID lockdowns happened too. So you had a lot more people kind of in-depthly reading into this culture revitalization that happened. But it also just comes with a territory that, you know, media and things are evolving so quickly and so like fast-paced that, you know, it's nice that Y2K lasted as long as it did, and it's still pretty up there, and we're still going to be able to like enjoy that revitalization for a good bit longer. But yeah, I'd say we're definitely more in the late 2000s, definitely creeping in on the 2010s, for better or worse. I only say that because I was a teenager in the 2010s, and it was. I'm curious to see how we revise that. I'm kind of nervous just because the 2010s was sort of a fiasco. I don't know how we're gonna do that over again, but I know inevitably it will happen, just because, you know, art, music, trends, the whole bit. It's all in a circle, so it's just a matter of time, really.
I find that the point you bring up with COVID is a really good one, because something that Y2K has that I kind of feel the other eras don't, or at least not to that extent, is this unapologetic attitude and positivity. Like, it's kind of this like future optimism that's reflected in like a lot of Y2K art, and I feel music is definitely a big part of that too. And it's also really nostalgic, of course, for a lot of people. But like most Y2K songs, or at least the ones that kind of like seeing a revival that are getting really popular again, are like maybe a bit edgy, maybe a bit, you know, have a bit of attitude to them. But they're all really, I don't know, not necessarily positive, but kind of proud. It's kind of hard to put into words, especially for me as like a non-native speaker. But there's just a certain edge to them that you don't really see in like 70s songs, you know, 80s songs.
Oh yeah, it's very in your face, because especially now with kind of, you know, Y2K being the base for kind of modern music, especially kind of pop and underground music now, it's like it's in your face, it's aggressive. You know, hyperpop is its own kind of discussion that kind of plays in tandem with all of that, and I think it's because just Y2K at its core, when it happened, like when you're thinking 98, 99 to about 2007. I mean, that whole era was, I think just it was very ahead of itself. Just in terms of like the type of art that was being produced, whether it was just, you know, visuals or video. I mean, you could look at any sort of commercial bumper for like Spike TV in 2004, and you could just feel that sort of level of new age aggression, or sort of like creative pushing the boundary of something. And I think at the time we really just were not ready for it. And now that same kind of attitude has come back into, you know, the 2020s. But now we have access to a lot more information and opinions, and people being able to put their voice into it. So I think it just sort of takes those aspects of that culture from back then and then just cranks it up to 10 in every direction, good or bad, really. But I think it's abrasive in a way that gets people's attention, not necessarily like in a bad way, but in a way that you know, once again, I think we're culturally, musically, creatively, you know, jumping forward a bit, and I think it's gonna give us a lot of good foundation for some cooler stuff in the future too.
I definitely hope so. Also, Waterfall, hello. I think especially if you look into the future, I don't remember the 2010s in like a really positive light, to be honest.
Yeah, same.
The only things I remember about the 2010s, because like with Y2K, I really like the fashion side. I'm a big fan of Y2K fashion, and I mean the OG kind. I feel like the revival, and I have said this in prior podcasts as well, is a bit cherry picking about what kind of, you know, fashion trends we're reclaiming from the Y2K era. I haven't seen anyone rocking the jeans vest and the jeans skirt with like some, you know, neon pink accessories. I haven't seen that in a while. But if I look at the 2010s, fashion-wise, I see Comme des Garçons, I see Babe, I see Ugg boots, I see a lot of fur on jeans. I see a lot of fur, funnily enough. And I kinda see more of like a hype beast culture slowly forming, festering, turning, maturing into what would turn into like the NFT hype bro kinda culture shtick later. Like a lot of like brand recognition, a lot of like brand envy, like everything needs to be, you know, super expensive and off brands. That's kind of what I associate the like 2010s with, but maybe that's a really like subjective point of view from someone who's like from Germany. because I know in America things always happen a bit sooner. Like in Europe, we always kind of get them a bit late, or at least it always felt like that for me as a kid. So
I'd say you're pretty accurate, honestly, because I think the 2010s could be split up into kind of two separate eras, really. And I think 2016, at least a lot of people my age would agree, was sort of the tipping point in terms of just like kind of fashion and art and culture. Like the early 2010s was people kind of like backing off from the vibrance and the kind of the maximalism or the weird kind of, you know, futuristic but also like vintage and mod go-go things that were the Y2K era, and being like, okay, we gotta rein it in a bit. And that was sort of like the introduction of like, all right, we're taking it backwards a little bit. You know, that's sort of when I mean, hipster culture had always been around, you know, in different ways for years and generations before that. But I think that's when it started kind of hitting the internet and more people started understanding like what was going on with all that. But that was more like in like the old school kind of thing. Like, you know, fashion was when I think 2010 to like 2015-ish fashion just as a whole, just because I was in high school at the time. So, I mean, fashion was pretty just kind of standard, at least at that point in time, at least for a high schooler. I mean, I can't speak for people that were in their 20s and 30s at the time, obviously, but I mean, fashion was very much just like, you know, pants and shirt. Maybe, you know, maybe it was name brand like American Eagle. I mean, American Eagle jeans, at least where I grew up, were everywhere, just on everybody. We were out of the Y2K and we were into like this weird sort of like hype prep thing going on where it was a combination of like preppy clothes but like, you know, like a little bit of like kind of dude and bro and frat aesthetics. And then that sort of evolved into hype culture as like the underground like hip hop scene started coming into the mainstream with you know, underground hip hop and rap and fashion and things like that. And then hype beast culture kind of became the norm. At the same time, that's also when like athleisure wear and all that. I don't know. I ramble a lot like I know about fashion, but I know fashion is its own absolutely completely deep in every direction own form of conversation. I'm not that knowledgeable in fashion as I am, so I'm not gonna talk about things that I don't know because I'm sure someone that knows fashion probably thinks everything I'm saying is wrong. But yeah, that first half of the 2010s was definitely like people were reining it back in from how wild the 2000s was. And then 2016 was this kind of just very aggressive, at least in my eyes, this aggressive kind of hype culture that just kept evolving and evolving and evolving into kind of where we are now.
So Grape says when you're from the South.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Let it be known to everyone that I'm speaking directly from someone that grew up in the South. So there was always like a bit of lag when it came to when fashion and art trends would kind of hit at least the mainstream areas of the South. Like if you were in the more metropolitan areas like Atlanta and Birmingham, like obviously you're gonna kind of be the avant-garde when it comes to stuff like that. But you know, where I grew up, it was very much, you know, whatever you could buy at just your local mall, that was the fashion. And it just, that's how the fashion evolved, is whatever was happening at those places.
Blue Smoke says, I'm from California. We were all over the place with fashion at the time, lol. Oh, I see. I didn't know that. It's always like interesting for me to hear because again, I'm from Germany. My like views of that will always be like slightly different on the like I don't know, more tinted lens towards like European fashion sometimes, but we definitely took a lot from like American fashion as like inspiration. And for me, what I kind of felt during the 2010s was that someone just said, hey, you're having too much fun. We have to be more serious and we have to be more marketable. And slowly, websites became like less personalized. Everything became minimalistic suddenly. And that kind of went for clothing, that went for web design, graphic design. I know this kind of corporate art style became more popular in a lot of places, just kind of like blobby. And I don't know, I guess boldness was just kind of seen as unprofessional, and being professional was kind of the new thing everyone wanted to achieve. At least that is how it was here. I don't know if you could also take that for like the American lens, but for us at least, you'd be like made fun of in school if you had like, you know, too outlandish clothes. Like if you were like pronouncing to the world that you were like emo or goth or like a rave kid, or I don't know, if you wore a foxtail to school because you liked anime, they'd beat you up. Like you'd not be accepted. And maybe that is because as the 2010s were going on, I was becoming older, of course. Like I was a teen, I was turning 18, 19, and that is when fashion changed for me, like again. You know, it's like a young adult, you do dress differently than like a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. But I definitely noticed that fashion became a lot more muted with like its colors and its shapes, with its like graphic design. Everything became really tame. And it really,
the minimalist approach was definitely a thing. I mean, we've just because I am a graphic designer, you see those discussions all the time of when I was initially getting into the field, that's what was happening. It was everyone making, you know, those minimalist versions of this logo, and you know, it's a very like kind of streamlined, one or two colors, you know. We've all seen those logos. We know what we're talking about, where they take a logo we know and they just kind of reduce it down to like the basic of basics. And you know, that happened with web design too. People were more focused on the user experience rather than the design of the interface. And you know, in a way, there was some good that came out of it. I mean, you know, streamlining a process to not be as bogged down is fine, but at the same time, you lose a lot of the mobility that came with it. I mean, maybe it's just me, but there's a lot of like websites and video games that have UI designs now that are just so oversimplified to a point to where it actually starts kind of having the adverse effect, where like obviously, yeah, you don't want it to be like maximalist and gaudy to where you don't know what's going on, but you need it to resonate with your user to a degree to where it's not all just blending into this same look to where they don't know what they're doing. And yeah, corporate art has evolved with the times too. I mean, you go back to the clip art era, you can go back to the Frutiger era, and now we're in this kind of like I think we're creeping out of like the oversimplified minimalist corporate era finally, I hope. But I'm not sure like what the corporate vibe is now, really. I don't really know what people are trying to do, because we're like still kind of stuck in the old era, but they're trying to do something new, and it's starting to clash. So I'm curious to see how they kind of pick it up from here.
Let me actually put an image up on screen, just so people see what you mean by like Frutiger Arrow. Because I always find that is like, that lives and breathes Y2K. It makes me really nostalgic, at least. Like, look at this.
And there, you can get really in-depth with this specific one. Like, I'm not going to talk any more in-depth about it, because I know there are a lot more people that I follow and follow me that could explain the history and the evolution of what this style of corporate art is a million times better than me. I honestly hope some of them make essay videos, because they could explain it so much better than me. But yeah, like, that was it. Like I said, corporate art evolved at not really at the same time as creative art, because corporate art, I'd say, was always lagging behind, just because, you know, there's so much red tape you have to go through when you're in the corporate creative field. You can be creative, sure, but like there's a lot more time and steps, so they were always behind, and they're always doing something a little safer, just because corporate. But yeah, Fruitige Arrow definitely of that time, and kind of I'd say it went a little past the early kind of part of the Y2K. It definitely drifted into like the 2008, 2009, and maybe early 2010 too, and evolved in its own different ways. Like you can find aspects of it that focused on nature, aspects that focused on like more just kind of combined things with vector art and metal art a little bit too. And again, those are their own subgenres of art that I'm not gonna act like a liaison on, because there are plenty of people that could explain it better than me. If you're curious about any of those, I'm sure you can find some sort of in-depth like writing or paper or video on like the history of those artistic styles.
There's always the Y2K aesthetic archive, so if you guys are into that, there are lots of resources there that kind of explain each individual like strand of aesthetic that kind of came out of the era, so definitely check that out.
Yeah, because Y2K it's a catch-all term for just that era. There's so many different little subgenres of like art that came out of that too, that can all be lumped into that because you think of it through kind of a nostalgic lens, but they are all super in-depth and have their own kind of unique history.
Well, definitely. I think the thing I was referring to is called the Y2K Aesthetic Institute. I think that's like the proper name. It's not archived. But yeah, you're definitely right. Like if I think about how much of an impact Apple had when it like released the iPod, released the iPhone, and those adverts with like the people dancing with their iPods and headphones behind like the colored background.
Oh yeah.
Like those changed aesthetic forever. Like after that, a lot of companies kind of tried to mimic that style, and I think that was kind of the gateway into this like minimalistic approach, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that's kind of like kind of poppy, really kind of vector based kind of corporate graphics came out, where they were still using bright colors and stuff, but they were drifting away from the very heavy like textural and like kind of gooey bubbly like early 2000s thing, and that's also just comes with the territory of like software was also changing throughout that time. Like the way like Photoshop and other types of kind of graphic software in the 2000s changed over time. Obviously in the corporate world, when that's your lifeblood as a creative is using those softwares, if that changes, you kind of have to change how you use it too.
And it's true, because like especially in the corporate world, you're not trying to be a step ahead most of the time. Like you're not really trying to innovate. If you do innovate, you do that by the strength of your product, not necessarily because you go above and beyond with your marketing. I think that's like a really lightning in a bottle kind of thing. Like it does definitely happen, like don't get me wrong. There are those like advertisements that kind of shaped the way for other advertisement to come, but I think most of the time, if you're not trying to build these big of like bridges, you're just trying to be like topical. You're just kind of trying to do what everyone else is doing as well, and that's nothing wrong with that, because creation, especially in a professional capacity, is always like a group project. So stuff that is like really out there doesn't get approved like all that often, because it goes through multiple people, and multiple people kind of have their hands on it, and then probably also like a corporate board. And that's why when these kind of like weird advertisements and stuff happen, they're a lot more memorable, because we don't even really think about all the ones we like forget on a daily basis, because they're just standard middle of the road, like the stuff everyone else is doing. That's like definitely a big part of that too. Hey, Warehouse.
Oh yeah.
Let's get back on track here. I want to know, do you struggle with things like art block, imposter syndrome, or procrastinating?
Oh yeah, and sometimes all three at once. Honestly, I think it's just as a creative, even with my DJ stuff or my work stuff or my my graphic design stuff, like it can all, it's all just part. It's just part of it, really. I mean, you're gonna have days where just you have ideas and you just can't translate them into what you're doing, or you can't even come up with the idea in the first place, or you finally make something and then you kind of instinctually start comparing it to other people's work, and that's just sort of a natural feeling as a creative. It sucks, I agree, but them's the breaks. It happens. Ultimately, you do eventually get out of an art block. Eventually, you do put something on paper or into a mix or into something digital and put it out into the world and get the reception that you're looking for. And sure, yeah, there's always going to be people that are better. That's just how it goes. There's so many people that are in creative fields now, like it kind of makes your head spin. But ultimately, I mean, you got to start somewhere, and really, as in any artistic degree, the only way you can go is up at this point. So you're going to get up there at some point. Just there's no point really rushing it. If you have an art block day, do something else to kind of get your brain going.
That's really good advice. That's personally something I do as well. Like, when I don't get really far with what I'm currently working on, I always take that as a sign that I'm like one leg into burnout. I'm always like, okay, I need a complete, like, kind of almost like a detox for like a couple days where, I don't open my VTuber accounts for the entirety of that period. I'm just kind of existing completely separate from that. And then when I come back, I feel so much more rejuvenated and like creative, and I'm able to take a new look at it again and kind of like, try again. So I resonate with that advice.
Oh yeah, and that break can be any length of time. A lot of people like to chalk it up as, I can take a break for a couple of days and kind of bounce back into it. But I mean, like, anytime I make a set and then submit it in for something, or play a show, I don't touch my deck for like 2 or 3 weeks after that, and then I can kind of start warming back up into it. Or take, for example, I mean, before I even got into graphic design and DJing and all this as a whole, I used to be interested in illustration, and I used to draw pretty regularly, like on a pretty daily basis for about a few years. And, as I got older, and then I was focused on like college work, and then I was focused on work, like that sort of fizzled out. And I still kind of struggle with the art block of, picking up traditional illustration tools and, drawing again. I've drawn a few times this year, but, there was a spell where I went, 2-3 years where I would maybe make one drawing a year, and that was even pushing it then. So, art block and, creative kind of struggles can happen to any degree, to any amount of time.
Grape says, Warehouse Radio drew a note card, just so you know. He has an archive of them. There's like 1,000. Oh, that's
Yes,
so cool.
I'm being exposed on stream now. Yeah, so when I initially started illustrating, I pretty much exclusively used index cards and note cards, just because I could easily take those with me to like school and stuff when I was bored. And, I would make, 1 to 2 to 3 a day for a few years, and eventually that stacks up. So I honestly have a storage tote with probably close to 1,000 illustrations that I'm still in the process of like slowly rescanning and archiving, just so I can have them up somewhere besides in a box in the closet. But yeah, I used to draw a lot, like a very, like, I didn't realize it was that much until me and Grapes were actually physically going through the box, and it took us maybe an hour and a half to like get through it all. It was kind of insane that I was pumping out artwork like that to that degree.
What made you go from illustration to graphic design to DJing? Like, how was that journey?
It was sort of a kind of bleak creative outlook when I was in late high school, kind of trying to look at what I wanted to do in college and what kind of the job prospects were. Um, just given that, I grew up in the South and I went to schools in the South, and, the South, in terms of the corporate level and the business level, like being an illustrator is hard. It's super duper hard to make it work. Maybe it's the same now. I'm not really sure. But I was like, okay, I kind of like playing around with like photo editing and stuff. Graphic design sort of seems to be taking off. I should probably kind of like invest in learning about this field. So I switched from illustrating and kind of used, the the ideas I had from that and kind of started translating it over into digital mediums, and it picked up pretty quick. I had some pretty decent mentors in college, and I was able to kind of pick up a decent job at the time after that, and kind of learned how the corporate art world worked. DJing, like I said, it started off just kind of making mixtapes and mixes here and there. DJing is definitely more on my hobby scale. I love warehouse radio as a whole, and curating and running all that. But I mean, it's not my main breadwinner. I do it all basically pro bono, just because I don't really have a way to monetize it other than kind of random merch drops here and there. But yeah, the DJing just sort of happened where I finally just bought hardware, and it just happened to be when lockdowns happened, so I was forced to learn how to use the hardware, and it just really kind of picked up and evolved from there, from everyone that I had met in the scenes that I was interacting with.
And look where you are now, Warehouse. Like, it all turned out so amazing.
Oh yeah, the amount of people that I've interacted with and like worked alongside, it's honestly kind of crazy. I mean, underground communities absolutely exploded during the kind of lockdown era, but still, I mean, even then, like, I was not expecting it to get where it is now, to be honest. Like, I was expecting it to just sort of be a slow burn hobby just as I went along, but it ramped up very quickly in just like 2-3 years.
Like, definitely, I think the lockdown made all of us more creative, but at this time also consume more content, consume more media. Also,
Oh yeah.
Blake, hello, chicken burger. Warehouse, are you more of a chicken burger fan, or are you more of a beef burger fan?
I'd say more of beef, honestly. I do like a nice burger.
I see. I'll add that to my personal Warehouse file. All right, so my next question for you is, let's see. Do you have any advice for young aspiring creators?
I mean, really just kind of stay consistent to some degree. Like, it doesn't even have to be like, consistent with just one specific thing. Like, if you have a creative outlet, be consistent with that, and then sort of look into other aspects that you may have never considered. Like yeah, I started with drawing and then ended up doing graphic design, and I did, mixtapes as a hobby. I never would have expected that I would actually like follow through and do physical DJing and, actually do performances and stuff. Because it's just, I never expected it. So just, follow through with the creative outlets that you already enjoy, but, keep your eyes on other ones that might catch your interest, because you never know that whichever one that you never would have expected to enjoy could end up being the one that you're really good at. And, consistency with just, that's really it, just consistency. Taking breaks and everything is fine. If you gotta take a break for some amount of time or a long amount of time, by all means. But don't just drop it ever completely, because then you'll be kind of sad that you left it behind.
I think that's the best advice, honestly, because at least for me, I've been VTubing for, I think, 7 months now. It's like 7 or 8 months. And I've only taken a break twice. Once when I literally moved to another country.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to disassemble my PC and could only reassemble it when I was here in the UK. And the second time was when I was going through like a personal family, like, you know, crisis where a family member like passed away and I was grieving and I needed, you know, like I was just not able to kind of stream and be open during that time. Like I really needed that little break to allow myself to get back on track and definitely like take that break if you need to, because I see lots of smaller creators, like lots of smaller VTubers who are like, oh, I shouldn't take a break because my you know, my audience is so small, they'll forget me if I take a break. And I'd say take it anyway, because you should take joy, you know, pursuing this hobby. You should have joy, you know, doing this, and you'll make yourself really uncomfortable by always putting this first, and you'll sap the joy out of it over time if you don't take breaks, because your mental health always comes first and it will always influence your content. It will always like influence the like, you know, the voice you're doing it with, the kind of attitude you bring to the table, or at least I like to think that. None of us are going to forget you. Yeah, I know that. I know that. I always feel guilty taking breaks. Even, you know, even when I go to bed, I'm always thinking, I could be working. I could be making a schedule graphic. I could be inviting people to the podcast. I could be, you know, researching proper channel point redeems or how to make TikToks. You know, like there's so much to do, and that goes for every hobby, especially when you also have like a social media account attached to that. But it really doesn't matter, because taking that break will always be better for you in the long run, even if you miss out on work a little bit.
Oh yeah, you can always come back to something, and you can always like try something new in the meantime to kind of like kickstart your creative brain. Like I've never made a PNG tuber in my life, but you know, for this interview I made this one. And honestly, it's kind of neat, and maybe I'll start using it on non-DJ related streams just for the sake of, you know, kind of killing time here and there. And maybe start kind of looking into like everything that comes with that, you know. There's so many creative avenues now just because of how just sort of, especially just, I mean, traditional creativity and art is always going to be around, will always be eternal, but just digital scope of creative outlets has exploded. Like you can get into so many like niche things now that, I mean, you can find something that really scratches that itch in your brain and kind of helps keep you creatively afloat for other things.
Definitely, and always try to remember why you're doing something. Like if you find yourself making, I don't know, making streams or making a YouTube video or publishing anything, and you find yourself just dreading it, like you find yourself, you know, trying to get around it, to not do it, I think that's a good sign that you just need to take a little breather and let yourself enjoy it again. And especially, like for people who monetize their stuff, I think it's also important to kind of do stuff just for them, you know, just to enjoy it. Because that's also like a surefire way to kind of run yourself into the ground if you're always like trying to, you know, do something that's popular. I think that is unfortunately a pitfall someone can easily kind of fall into.
Oh, definitely.
All right, Warehouse. So what do you do when you hit like a dead end on something you really wanted to work out? Like it probably doesn't happen during live performances, because I feel like you prep really, really well for that. But what do you do if plans fall through whatsoever for like a show or a mix and it doesn't turn out how you wanted it to?
It's just there's a lot of aspects of it that, you know, I can make a mix that I'm okay with, and then it plays, and then, you know, after the fact, I think, I could have done all these things better or this and that. But, ultimately, a lot of times that mix is going to play regardless. And there's always going to be people that like it, even if I'm not the biggest fan of it. Um, that's a tip that me and Grapes have kind of learned is like sometimes with a mix or really kind of any creative thing that you produce, uh, just come back to it like a few months or maybe even like a year down the road and just sort of listen to it without like thinking about it too hard. Like a lot of the early warehouse mixes are rough. Like there's no getting around that. And as time went on, they evolved and got a little better. And there are some that like I'm not still that proud of, but sometimes I'll have them on in the background while I'm working, and I'll be like, "Oh, this mix wasn't near as bad as I thought it was when I was performing it." Um, so sometimes it just takes time to kind of get around that. In terms of roadblocks, as like for example, like a stream going down, like my internet failing or something like that. That comes with the territory. I mean, you as a streamer probably know that the internet is a little kooky, and sometimes it'll just break on you for no reason, and that's just part of it. I mean, I've had an infamous one, at least in terms of warehouse history, was episode 10 was going to be the Halloween episode. No, it wasn't 10. I think it was like 13 or something. It was still like the first year of warehouse. It was going to be the Halloween episode, and at the time, I wasn't using Twitch. I was using Mixcloud, which was, basically Twitch, but specifically for DJs. And it was a really cool platform. And the pre-lobby was open, and there were like 70 people, like already like tuned into the stream before the show had even began. And then like maybe 20 seconds into the stream, as like when it started, their servers went down. Like the Mixcloud
no!
servers. Yeah, like my internet was fine, but their servers went down, and like it was just a big mess. And I always think about that because I was like, dang, that was like the biggest audience I ever really had, even still kind of to this day. Like I have a very like solid audience that always shows up to the streams now, which I'm honestly more thankful for. But like at least since Mixcloud was such a young website, all of my streams were always on the front page for some reason, so kind of having to lose that sucked. But ultimately Twitch is just so much more accessible for people that in the long run I much prefer using it just because it's just so much easier. And I guess in terms of IRL shows, I mean, it's just sort of the luck of the draw when it comes to like performing IRL as a DJ, just in terms of like the right person reaching out to you at the right time. There are lots of instances where I've tried to reach out to people, and they're like, yeah, we want to have you on, and it just never comes to fruition. And sometimes you just gotta draw it up as an L and kind of move on to the next one. I've met a lot of great people in the URL and the RRL spaces, so it's there is like there you do have to make those connections. Like there is sort of that I guess kind of businessy aspect, even in the underground scenes, of making connections and getting in good with people and stuff like that. But still be honest with yourself. Like don't sell like a fake version of yourself to these people, just to kind of get here and there, because ultimately you're not going to be satisfied with that at the end of the day. I don't know. In the performance and entertainment space, roadblocks happen. It's there's going to be speed bumps, internet's going to go down, stream's not going to work, you're going to press the wrong button mid-mix. It happens. The reality is the main person that's going to know is you most of the time. Like more often than not, like when tech issues at a show happens, the audience doesn't care. They're already there, like they didn't come there for like a super perfect performance. They came there just to see whoever play whatever. So the short version is it's not that deep. It'll happen. just keep on pushing.
I think a big part of it is also that, especially when you interact with others and those kind of plans don't come into fruition, I think big advice that I can give is to never take it personally. Like even when people say, "Oh, we love your content," we'd love to collab. I think, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Like, don't let yourself be discouraged by that kind of thing. it's almost never like a personal issue they have with you. Like most likely it's a logistical issue or a budgetary issue or just their own anxiety or their own feelings about it. But I would never like relate that back to your work and the quality of your work, which is something that I still sometimes let happen to me. Like, for example, if I ask someone to join me on the podcast and they don't respond at all, like not even like a no, I'll be a bit down because of that. Like, I'll be a bit sad because I'm just like, oh, me and my baby podcast, I don't deserve guests, you know, like I must have been so, it must have been so embarrassing to, you know, send that to like a bigger creator. But I think...
Oh yeah.
Oh, you
Oh
first.
no, you go. Oh no, you go.
I think you have to keep trying. I really think it's just a matter of kind of seeing who clicks with you, because in the end you'll find those people who will want to collaborate with you. And I think it's never right to like disregard people who are like smaller than you or your own size. I know a lot of people do that, by the way. Like, you read that a lot in like the VTuber community, that people are like, oh, my friends have like blown up and now they don't talk to me anymore. Like, you read that sometimes, that stuff like that happens, and I'm always like thinking, wow, were the numbers like so important after all? Like, that's really weird. I find that quite perplexing. So my advice definitely is, don't stop reaching out to people and don't take it personal if it doesn't come to fruition.
Oh yeah, when I first started reaching out to guest performers or even just like artist highlights, where I would highlight you know, other creatives on my social media. I mean, in my time, like my social media like only had like a couple dozen people. My streams were only getting like, you know, 5 or 6 views. But you know, the main thing is like, you know, you can reach to any like level you want. Like, yeah, you can be a small name and reach out to a big name, but you know, more times than not, you're probably not going to get a response, just because, you know, if they're big enough, they might even have an agent that goes through all that. Who knows? But like sometimes, like you're always going to be surrounded with people that are also at your level. So what's best to do is reach out to them, because they're probably in the same position as you are. So just kind of, you know, giving them a hand. You know, you never know, in the future they might reach out to you. I mean, that's how I've ended up on like Millennium Strike and stuff, is that a lot of the performers that are involved in that community, I've also highlighted and given a platform on my end, and in turn, you know, they've reached out to me for in-person events as well as online events to help out with. So it's sort of a two-way street, and you just sort of kind of have to know who else is in that same boat as you before you start kind of climbing upwards.
And I think there's also the way of, don't approach people and promise them friendship if all you want is a collab. I think that's also a big part of it, because sometimes I'll have people in my DMs and they're like, hey, how are you? And I'm just like, I'd rather you just tell me you want to, you know, work on a certain project with me than kind of try to like, you know, sweeten me up like that. Like, personally, I really, really dislike that when people do that.
Oh yeah.
And Ghost Smoke is saying, I get that feeling. It takes a lot to put yourself out there like that, and getting no response stings a bit. I think the worst, like for me personally, it hurts the worst when people say, yeah, let's do that. And then I say, oh, wonderful. What date works for you? Or like, hey, does this and this date work for you? And then they stop responding. And I'm like, oh, okay. But again, you know, it happens, and sometimes schedules just don't align or time zones don't align, which again, for me as someone who is from Germany, now lives in the UK, so there's like a one hour time difference. That's always the best bit, when I'm like, I'd love to collab with you, but it's like 5 a.m. in the morning for you when I usually stream.
Right.
I'm quite happy that you had time, Warehouse, because you were from America too.
Oh yeah, thankfully it's a Saturday and it's the afternoon, so I definitely had time.
I'm glad. I'm really glad. All right, Warehouse. I want to know, what are you currently working on? And how do you feel
Uh,
about your current project?
I've been working on, at least in terms of like my job. I've been doing some freelance stuff here and there, which has been nice, and hopefully evolving that into something. In terms of warehouse related stuff, I can't fully announce it because I don't know if it's been like fully approved with the venue or not, but possibly something in late June for those of you in the general Southeast Nashville area. Hopefully that's getting kind of sealed away and getting put together, and I will make more announcements as that comes along. Keep your eyes on Millennium Strike as well. I believe you might see me in their next episode that they're going to do, which will be also in late June. So I'm working on mixes for that as well. General warehouse stuff, I am getting some merch made. I'm about to kind of pull everything off of Redbubble and move it over to. I'm about to start kind of just like single-handedly producing merch, just because kind of Redbubble's legal stuff they've been doing lately has been kind of gross.
With AI,
So
right?
yeah.
Mm.
So I'm gonna start kind of going out of my way to kind of produce merch myself and sell it through Big Cartel. But I am getting something produced right now. It's been in the works for probably 2 months now, I think. And I think people will really enjoy it. I'm not gonna give away what it is, but it's real cute, and I think people will like it.
I really like the keychain I got off your first merch drop. It hangs on my lamp. Like I can see it when I look to the left.
Oh yeah, that was such a fiasco to get made, just because like I had never gotten like physical merch produced from like an actual like production company before. So I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, the original Wemo mascot I made when I was at work and we were working late because we were waiting on jobs to get approved. I was just sitting at my desk and I came up with it, and I was like, you know what, this works. I'm just gonna run with it. And then it kind of just became the face of Warehouse Radio. And yeah, getting the keychain made was a fiasco. Getting them all in and sent out was a whole thing, but I still love them to this day. You know, it got made as best as it could, but I mean, nothing felt better than like once people started receiving them after I shipped them out, and everyone was like posting pictures of them with like all the other kind of vinyl toys that have been coming out the past few years from independent artists. So that felt really nice.
Yeah, I saw yours together a lot with like Y2K. I think
Oh
they
yeah.
made like their own little like 3D printed figure. That was pretty cool. Like I like my Wemo. I like him a lot. He's a bit like red tinted on the part that's supposed to be white, but I really
Yeah.
like him. I
That
like
was
him
that was
quite a
the one
bit.
downside is like I sent them all the colors to get produced, and Wemo's only 3 colors. It's green, black, and white. And when they all showed up, they all just sort of had that like tint on the face, and I didn't want to have to deal with getting them produced again and sent back, so I just ran with it, and people still liked it. And like my favorite recent one is I think it was Taffa and I forget, Machine Angel, I think it was. We're at a show in Australia and they sent me a photo of both of them at the show with their Wemo keychain, and ultimately that's what I want it. Like I'd say if Warehouse Radio had an end goal, the goal I think is I just want to be considered a part of like rave or underground history to some degree, whether it be like the platform I gave or just like Wemo like getting put into like a rave mascot archive, because I know those are a thing. So seeing people like really interact with the stuff I've made physically in the real world is really nice.
It's such a sweet dream. I kind of have a really similar dream. Like for me, the podcast is always kind of a way to like showcase creators that I really love and that have influenced me and that keep influencing me. And it's always like I don't like comparing myself to other creators, but I kind of like to take inspiration from others, how others do things, and it kinda, I don't know, it gives me a lot of how do you say? It lights a fire under my butt to do more when I see how many amazing things other people are doing, and it's really inspiring to me. And with Wemo, I always have them to the left of me on my lamp, so I see him like every day when I'm working, and I have the letter that Grape sent to me right above me, over my head on my wall. So that's always like a nice little reminder of like how I made friends with this hobby, and it really means a lot to me because when I started out, I was pretty lonely, and I love you, my angel. I love you too. I love you too. I didn't have a lot of friends. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I had kind of trouble like reaching out to people, and like connecting with people, and that's the reason why I started streaming, because I just wanted to kind of share my like stream of consciousness, like my thoughts. So like knowing that I made close friends that like sometimes people tell me that they really like listening to the podcast and it makes them really happy to listen to, or they draw while they're like listening to it, like stuff like that. And that always kind of reminds me that even though I sometimes think, oh, I was like the most annoying host imaginable, like sometimes I'll ask a question and I'll think like, oh, like a fourth grader could have asked a better question than the one I did. But then I just remember like other people derive so much joy out of this, and I'm completely fine if if that is my legacy. Like I'm completely fine if my impact while being alive, while being here, is just that I gave a platform to other people that I love and want to support. Oh, you're drawing and listening. Ah, perfect. I love that for you. Very nice. Yeah, sorry if that was like really sappy, but it is true. Like I started VTubing. I started prepping for VTubing when I was in the hospital. And that's why like it has all kind of like been building up to this moment. And I'm really, really happy that, my friends want to interact with me, like collab with me, and I can showcase them and share my community with them. And yeah, so thank you for being here, Warehouse. It really does mean a lot to me.
Oh, of course. And VTubing and all that has exploded the past couple years too. So I'm honestly really happy to be like interviewed in this sort of culture of the internet, because I mean, I've followed Grapes for a long time too, but I mean, I know very little about sort of the inner mechanisms of the VTubing world. So being able to kind of share what I do through an outlet that you've created is very nice.
Thank you, Warehouse. It's really funny because actually, I mentioned it to you when we spoke before, but I think I can say it here now briefly. I knew about Warehouse first, and that's kind of how I came to know Grapes. I was listening to a YouTube video by a bigger YouTuber named Nick Robinson, and it was like a stream highlights thing, and he had your music running in the background, but because it was like a VOD, he didn't credit the music, obviously, because it was just like a highlight clip thing. So I started like frantically typing like Y2K rave remix, like 2000s rave mix, and I started like browsing that and frantically trying to find you. And then I did at some point. I was really, really happy, and I checked you out, and I saw you were affiliated with Grapes VTuber. I thought, wow, like these two people are so cool. And then I started interacting with Grapes, and that's how it all kind of came to be. Like that's what I mean. Like you discover one thing through another thing, and suddenly it's like a big part of your world. And I think that's lovely. Ah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm always so sappy during these. I don't know why. These always make me really, really soft and sappy. Don't get too used to it, Shellshillers. Don't get too used to it. Good times, yeah. Exactly. So I want to know, Warehouse, which project have you been the most proud of? It can be overall, it can also be recent.
I mean, I'm proud of where Warehouse got as a whole. If I had to pick something a little more specific, like a mix or a set or something, I think as of right now, one of my favorite sets I've ever done was for. It was for Skull System. Skull System did a online rave, and I was on the lineup, and it was for a show called Club Void, and I don't know what happened, but the stars just sort of aligned when I was making that mix, and I was able to kind of frantically put together some visuals that synced up pretty well with it. And I mean, it's only a 30-minute set, but it's still probably one of the most like in-depth and layered mixes that I had ever done. So I'm super duper happy with how that turned out. Hoping the ones I'm working on now end up being pretty good. Just kind of given a potential live show coming up. In terms of other projects, I mean, honestly, I really enjoy all the posters that I've made for Warehouse. Like, I'll always kind of be proud of those, just because those are sort of my graphic design escape from my normal work or my corporate stuff. Is that I can kind of just funnel all these ideas into something for Warehouse, just because I mean, like Warehouse has a logo, sure, and a mascot, but doesn't really have that strict of branding. So I can be pretty loose with everything that I make in terms of like merch and posters and all that. So it gives me a lot of freedom, and every poster I've made, I've been really proud of.
I can 100% see that, because when I saw that you had like commissions open, I was like, ooh, like these look so neat. And everyone, like if you guys ever need graphic design work done for whatever reason, keep your peepers peeled for when Warehouse has commissions open. Like the stuff looks really, really nice. Sadly, I couldn't afford it at the time because I was already prepping my move, and I had to be like a bit more conservative with my money. It didn't work out, by the way. In the end, I came to the UK with like zero euros in my bank account. I needed to like work for a month to kind of like replenish my coin purse. That was all really chaotic.
Moving is such a huge cost. I mean, you move countries, so I can't imagine. Like when I moved, I was only moving like a state away at any given time. But even then, it's always a pretty big blow.
It's always like there's like some costs you just don't anticipate. Like for example, I had to get, because this is only like a 6-month stay before I have to go back and then file for like a more permanent visa. I had to pay health insurance separately, and because the UK is no longer in the EU because of Brexit, I had to pay as if I was going to like Japan or Bali or America. Like I had to pay a premium for health insurance because the UK is no longer in the EU, and that was like almost 500 quid for 6 months, and I only earn like a bit over $1,000 a month, so that was like half my money just like gone, besides just like, the tickets. I needed to get a good suitcase. I needed to like do some insurance. Like it was a lot of extra costs, and I've only now started to financially recover from that, and my 6-month stay is almost over. So I'll have to go back to Germany, file for a visa, wait for it to get accepted, pack up my stuff again, and then permanently move over there. And it's still, it's completely worth it. Like I want to, I do want to start a life there. But man, like, especially at the same time I've been working on VTuber assets, I've been commissioning a 3D model, and sometimes it just feels like a gut punch if I read my health insurance policy and I'm like, oh, if only the UK was in the EU still, then it would have been like $10 a month.
Right.
Then it would have been so cheap. was so unfortunate. But again, you know, I don't mind it. It had to happen, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, sometimes your plans change without you wanting it. I mean, I think kind of I'm in a similar situation of where I'm finally kind of back where I want to be financially, because I used to work in a big city and then like all those like layoffs happened and I was like, okay, I live in a big city, how hard could it be to find, work? And then I ended up like staying in a city without a job for like 6 months and just completely just tearing through my money to try and find a job. And sometimes you just gotta, you got to take your losses. So yeah, I moved back home. I kind of set up in a different space, and I've been able to kind of conserve my money more and kind of get back on my feet. And honestly, I'm way happier. Like, yeah, it was nice being in the big city and doing all that, but like I was miserable trying to deal with all that. So like sometimes you just kind of have to like take a step back for like your own sake and then kind of re-coordinate and jump off again.
I 100% relate to this because in Germany I was from a really big city and I was happy that I got the job that I got. I work in marketing. I write mainly, so I do creative writing. And I was really happy about this like opportunity, right? Because it was like my first ever creative job. You know, it was better than working in a hotel or working at Subways. Oh, I've done a lot of odd jobs. I don't even want to talk about it. I've done a lot of like odd work to just kind of scrape by. And I've had this security for like this job. And since I came to the UK, I've just been doing home office.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm slowly having to like accept that if I permanently move over here, I'll obviously lose this kind of security net. Like I'll have to find a new job. And I'm coming to terms with that my life will be like thrusted into uncertainty again just because it's so worth it anyway. And I will find a job here, but definitely like this time I'll be better prepared with some more savings to chew through because like, oh my god, I was so surprised when I got that like, here's your bill thing from like the health insurance thing. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, like how much can it cost to just be insured?
Yeah.
Well, Smoke says, all jobs with good stories though. You're just happy I almost died because a piece of frozen bread. That does make for a good story. I agree. I do not regret the experience I have made. Even though some weren't that nice. Like, having a near-death experience for minimum wage is not how I expected to go out. Also, Blake says, you and a few others inspired me to stream. Thank you, Blake. Thank you. You know, it really does mean a lot when people say that to me because I have times where I feel really insignificant, where I like wake up and I'm just like, I sound so silly. I don't sound serious and like put together at all, and I'm such an amateur compared to all these amazing creators who have gotten their shit together. But every time I talk to someone else, I kind of feel like I'm able to learn from them and become closer to that person I want to become. So I'm always happy when I have other creators on the show because every perspective is unique and it's always so lovely to kind of hear everyone's like outlook on things like Y2K, like the creative process, like all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, I don't know. I think that is more of my purpose than kind of being all that put together because so far, so sometimes I really have moments where I feel like, oh, a fourth grader could have made a more coherent sentence than I have. But yeah. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to grow. I do appreciate that. Okay, Warehouse. The last question for today, and arguably maybe even the most important one.
Okay.
Is there anyone else you find so amazing you want to shout out? Someone you think they need that extra bit of support? They definitely deserve it.
Oh man. I'd say there's honestly a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and cover some general basis of, like, I'm saying this not out of vanity at all. If y'all are interested in sort of the type of music or the type of art that's kind of involved with all these styles that both me and Digi like, honestly, go through my follower list. Like, go through the people that I follow on both Twitter and Instagram and all that, because those are all like artists and musicians and producers and DJs and visual effects artists that I think kind of fit into like the overall warehouse mold. They're all people that I, fully support and love seeing their work. A lot of them that I've talked to personally. Um, Definitely, like if you're wanting to start from nothing, jump into those. There's hundreds of people out there doing a lot of really great similar stuff. In terms of big ones that are more kind of community based, um, I'd say the main one would be Millennium Strike. Millennium Strike is a great group of people. They also do sort of kind of monthly or bi-monthly streams. And instead of sort of highlighting one or two artists at a time like I do with my streams, they will do kind of full festival length performances with like a large lineup of maybe anywhere from like 6 to 10 to 12 people per show. And a lot of the artists through Millennium Strike have also been involved with Warehouse, so very good people. Love all of them. They do great stuff. They are very passionate about that sort of aesthetic, of just like the old digital kind of thing going on. Definitely check them out. Another good one, let's see. Desktop Generation is a really good one. They do a lot of work in the kind of metal heart scenes right now. They put out publications based on that. If you're really into that kind of like metal heart aesthetics, kind of the visuals that kind of got paired with trance and kind of like deep ambient type stuff of the 2000s, definitely check them out. Very great. Um, and of course, I mean, shout out to Grapes. I mean, the purple VTuber themselves. Got to give them a shout out because they've been involved with Warehouse as well, and I've helped them out with stuff too. So always got to give them a shout out.
I think that sounds really good. Grapes definitely deserves it too. Grapes is lovely. I think that's a really good point, because that's like what you said earlier, was just like going into your follows and kind of seeing who's there, because that's usually how I discover creators. Like sometimes I'll go on a VTuber or a musician or an artist, and I'll just go on the like who follows this person kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go like yep, and I follow like all of them. And I usually only like unfollow if they start posting like too often, or just stuff that doesn't completely vibe with me. Like it's a process, but I definitely relate to that.
That same process is basically how I came across so many of the musicians that I've ended up following, because basically since high school, I always called it SoundCloud surfing, because I've basically exclusively used SoundCloud since I was in high school. Where if there's an artist I like, I go through their catalog, but then on top of that, I go through the songs and the artists that they follow and they like, because how SoundCloud works, if you see what the artist you follow is reposting and all that, so you have this very kind of snowball effect of all these different types of artists and stuff to keep tabs on. And I'm actually pulling it up now. In terms of songs that I've liked on SoundCloud alone, it is now sitting at almost 17,000. So you can definitely find a lot of stuff out there. If you have an artist that you like, see what they like, and you could find so many like expanded kind of realms of music or art that you never even thought of.
Hello, Raider! It's Rhea! Thank you for the raid! Thank you! Sorry, Warehouse, I just quickly wanted to respond to the Raiders. Hey, Rhea, how was your stream? Thank you so much for choosing me for your raid. Hello, guys! Hello! I'm Digicel, a Tamagotchi VTuber. I like lost media, toy prototypes, and everything Y2K. So if that's your thing, definitely consider sticking around. But yeah, hello everyone! Hello, hello! We're talking about how to find new artists you like and new musicians and stuff, and we basically just said that sometimes you need to find one person whose stuff you enjoy and like go into their follows and just kind of go through everyone that also makes music or also makes art, and that's like a great way to find new people to enjoy. Yeah, that was my main point pretty much. But yeah, hello raiders, hello. Yeah, I think the points that you brought up were all pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think stream died there for a second, at least on my end. But yeah, 100% that. I think all the points you brought up were really good. I think there are always like so many new artists who just kind of sprout out of the ground. And it's always really amazing to see someone kind of like have that glow up from just starting out, having their unique kind of style. And then you see, you know, over time they kind of form themselves, they kind of morph into their full artistic identity, like over time. I always enjoy that. I always kind of enjoy that, like that climb.
Oh yeah, especially like, you know, because around the time I started, a lot of the artists that I've platformed and stuff were starting around that time too. So being able to see them evolve like in real time has been really crazy. Just, I mean, like I said, there are some artists that, you know, I platformed that were, you know, already decently big as they were, but now they're like huge. And seeing people like really get in depth, like emotionally invested into their craft has been really sweet. You know, everyone is kind of going in their own direction, but still kind of like, you know, always harping back to the community that they started in, which is always really sweet.
Definitely that. Like, I find it so sweet. I didn't have a mentor when I like started out. I didn't have any sort of person that could like guide me the way, you know, kind of help me. But I made friends over time who kind of like filled that spot. I was able to learn from other people's experience. And nowadays I just kind of try to give that like forward. So I always kind of try to, you know, to help people with their OBS or kind of like help with maybe with like lore writing or like anything I can do, because it's always so sweet to see someone really like, I don't know, get like, you know, get really into their craft and really make something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I always just kind of hope to be that positive influence that kind of makes you stick to it and makes you pursue it seriously, because it's easy to fall off. It's easy to just say, oh, you know, I'll make it another day, oh, I'll do it later. But consistency really is key in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the kind of a reality check for me was the first time that I had met a lot of the people in the like specifically the Millennium Strike community in person was, you know, 1 to 2 years after I had first gotten involved with all of them. And, you know, I'd platformed a bunch of the artists on there and all of that. But then it didn't really hit me until that first Millennium Strike live show in Chicago last year, because I had people come up to me, you know, being like, "Oh my God, you know, like, you know, I love you on your house, you know, and they would thank me for like letting them be on there, and they were like really like happy and grateful, and it did really like register with me that like, oh, like what I did for them, you know, actually, you know, really meant something to the core of it, and you know, that's always a really really enjoyable feeling to know that, you know, to some degree, whether or not like, you know, you think you feel like you're garnering a big audience or not, that you're really, you know, giving these people something that they can be proud of.
And I think like even just for yourself, like if you start thinking, you know, what other hobbies could I have pursued? Like what other endeavors could I have put my energy in? Like I am always happy that it is something creative at the end of the day, because it makes me fall asleep a bit easier somehow. Like personally.
Oh yeah.
It's just that I think when you start out, it's so difficult to make these connections initially. Like it can be so intimidating to put your stuff out there and kind of like, respond to comments or, message other people. Like I remember that was like a big roadblock for me in the beginning, just kind of accepting that some people wouldn't like me no matter what I would do. Some people, for example, they don't understand certain music genres. There are people who only listen to their type of music, and then like even now when I browse music, sometimes I'll see like negative comments on YouTube videos of pretty good music. And I just think, damn, like you chose to be negative. Like you didn't have to write that you didn't like this type of music. You could have just kind of went on with your day. And still you chose to, kind of rub it into that person's face. And
oh yeah, and oh no, you go.
You first, no.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like there's a personal level of like kind of curation you have to do with people that you let be involved with your projects. I mean, like to agree with like some people aren't gonna like what you do and this and that. Like for example, like my friends that I grew up with, like they support the warehouse thing and all that, but like they don't like electronic music, and that's fine. But they still support like warehouse as a whole because they know that like it's something that I enjoy, and it garners an audience and all of that. So you can still have people that support like you for you, even if they don't like fully understand like what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. Like in the past, I kind of had to come to terms with probably not telling all of my friends what I was doing.
Oh yeah.
Because most of the time I'd get either financial advice or content advice, and neither of the advice I've gotten has been really good.
Yeah.
Like it was always like for content, I remember I think my first couple streams were like streaming really small games. And I remember a friend reached out to me after one of my streams and said, "You should stream Fortnite. Fortnite's popular right now." And I was like, have you not known me for the past couple of years? Like I've never played Fortnite ever, and maybe it's a great game, but it's not really my cup of tea. And it's not really the kind of thing I want to do with streaming. Like it's not kind of, I don't know, not really on brand for me, what I want to pursue. And then I only got like that kind of advice. They were like, "Oh, you have to check out the new COD." And I was like, there's like no universe I'll stream COD. There's like no universe where I'll just jump on the bed, like the bandwagon of whatever game is like popular and just kind of try to ride that. And quite generally, for growing, that's necessarily even good advice for that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Go smoke. Oh, sorry, you first.
Oh no, no, you can go ahead and read those if you need to.
Sorry, my what is it called? My headphone fell out. But now I can hear you again.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, speaking back to like the starting out in any sort of like creative community, that it's a very intimidating part. That actually I completely forgot. It brings up there is a bit of kind of funny warehouse lore that comes with like the initial starting out phase of when I was making warehouse. I was same to what you were saying. I was terrified of not being like received well, or just like not being received at all. So because the name was Warehouse Radio, I basically there for like the first few months of starting out, I kind of LARPed that Warehouse Radio was actually a group of people that were running it, like as like an actual thing rather than just one single person. And I after a while I kind of got rid of that, just because it was starting to confuse people, because they were always referring to Warehouse Radio as like a group of people. So they were always confused when like a Warehouse Radio set would come on, because they were like, "Well, who's DJing?" And like you couldn't explain that very well. And like I think it's pretty much cleared up now, but I remember for like the after effects of accident of going through and doing that was that there for like I'd say maybe about a year or so, even after like I had pretty much made it clear that it's just like one single person that runs warehouse, is that I would still every once in a while get someone DM me still thinking that it's like an actual like group or a business, and I always feel kind of bad because it's like, oh man, I did not clarify that very well. But then again, that's on me, just because like when I first started, I was like, I don't want them to see me as a single entity. But now, I think I've met enough people, and I'm comfortable enough running warehouse as it is that yeah, it is just me. It's always been just me.
I think I got confused by that because I was like, again, I was listening like to the first couple mix, and I was listening to like your backlog. So I think I got confused by that as well. When I
Yeah.
looked up like some social media things, I was like, wait, is Warehouse like so successful that he has like multiple underling warehouses working for him as well? Like, how does that work? Also, we need to get through the content of the comment backlog real quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Ghostsmoke says, I listen to a little bit of everything, but just because I don't like a song or a genre doesn't mean it's bad, just not my taste. Yeah, I agree with that. And then Blake Chu says, I like Nightcore. Also big agree with that. It's not everyone's thing. May someone tell me where the guest is from? Yeah, Warehouse Radio. Do you wanna mildly, not really dox yourself, but like, where are you active?
So I am from the southeast U.S. I've lived at the Gulf Coast. I've lived in Georgia, and I've lived in Alabama. So I stick around there. I frequent the Chicago area pretty often. No grapes, you can't give away my address. But yeah, I stick around and live in the southeast. Which honestly puts like an interesting kind of spin on just being an underground, like in the underground electronic scene, just because for the longest time those types of scenes were not prevalent down here at all, other than in like major cities. But I mean, especially like Alabama as a whole, I mean, like the electronic scene is tiny, it is itty bitty, but in recent years it's actually started to kind of grow and flourish, at least in like the larger metropolitan areas.
Where are your live shows? Like, if someone wanted to catch you live, where would they have to go?
Well, I don't really have like a dedicated like place where I perform live. Usually if I'm performing live, it's because I've been invited to play somewhere. The times I have played live, I've played live in Chicago, and I've played live in Atlanta, Georgia. And hopefully gonna be playing live in Nashville this coming summer.
Those are all places to me. I'm not from the US, so I have no idea where any of those places are. But you guys from America, you're smart cookies. You know where those places are. I only know Washington DC, Los Angeles, Mali. No, is that a place? Malibu Beach? Isn't that for 2.5 Men?
Oh, Malibu?
Is that a place? Malibu? Is that a real thing?
I think it's a real thing.
I mean, I wouldn't know. Again, I have no literacy for like American things.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry if I seem a bit uneducated where things are. I think Tennessee, that's where Nashville is, right? Nashville,
Yes.
Tennessee? Okay, yeah, I know that one. And I know Houston, Texas. That one I know too.
I would like to physically have, I mean, like, the pipe dream of Warehouse is to, like, actually eventually kind of take over a venue and be able to kind of do what I do with Warehouse Radio, but in a live setting of, platforming smaller artists, having some sort of art space for visual artists to put their work and things like that. But that comes with, like, realty, and realty is very expensive.
I see. I'm just like trying to wrap my head around how organizing a live show even works. Like there must be so many factors to make that happen.
Like I definitely one of my goals for this year is to at least kind of set up an actual live show. I had an idea of doing it for my 50th, but I think I'm gonna like pivot that for something else. But I still do have a couple artists lined up that would want to perform live. So I'm hoping maybe like later in the year I could set up a live show. But yeah, there's so much that goes into it that, especially like, I mean, I have very limited equipment as it is, so you're kind of dependent on whatever the venue's rules are, in terms
Mm.
of like what they can supply you with, what their scheduling is, and things like that. But yeah, that's why I much more enjoy being invited to be in someone's live show rather than planning my own, just because like I'm going through the process of planning my first one now, and it's a lot of work. Like, I mean, big props to anyone, whether it's like the DIY spaces, the small scale venues, or even the big stuff that can actually like plan and do all that. Like, I mean, even like one of my first internships I ever had, like when I was a kid in college, was like I worked for a music promoter that helped run shows and ran a festival, and it's insane the kind of like background level of work that goes into all those things at any scale.
Did you ever have, or like, did you ever consider doing like wedding DJs or like birthday DJs? It's like that kind of job as like a side hustle.
I have been asked about that, and the only reason I've denied it is just because of like I mostly just keep DJing as like a hobby thing. Um, if it gets to the point to where like warehouse is popular enough to like actually be profitable, then like sure, maybe I'll consider like actually kind of businessifying it a little bit. But the reason I turn down like events like that, especially if it's for like a friend or something, is because like with weddings, like it's their special day, and I don't want to like accidentally like mess up a mix or something, or like make the vibes wrong on their special day. So I would much rather just like be there and support them in person rather than like have them kind of depend on me for like running some sort of show for them.
That does sound like a pretty fun wedding though, with your music there.
Oh yeah, that would be sick. But at least the weddings I've been to so far, and the ones that I had turned down and ended up like going to just as a patron, um, yeah, I don't think my mixes would have would have gone over with the general audience.
I think some people also sometimes just think they can kind of like save a bit of money by like asking a friend, and then they just kind of hope that a person who maybe does one thing is also versed in like versed is like knowing how to do it like another thing.
Hmm.
Like maybe they think, oh, because warehouse is like Y2K music, he can also just whip out the wedding classics and seamlessly mix those together.
Right.
But yeah, like I definitely get that. Funnily enough, I had an email in my inbox today that I have never gotten before. I got invited for an anime con in Luxembourg.
Oh yeah.
And they asked me if I wanted to have a panel there. I don't know how many people get that kind of email, but I was pretty happy about that. I would love to do it, but I don't have the funds at the moment to really do that, and I don't have the equipment. Like, I don't know how to set that up. And I'd also have to pay for my own table at their thing.
Hmm.
And it's just like it is lovely they thought of me. I've never been asked for something like that before, but I simply don't have the infrastructure to kind of like make that happen. And I don't speak French, which most people I heard speak in Luxembourg, as well as Belgian and like German. German I can't speak. That's like possible, but I'm kind of out of luck with French and Belgian, so it's so nice. I was quite happy, someone asked me to have like a panel at their con. I think that's cute. But yeah, nah, it's not gonna happen, unfortunately. But maybe in the future. Maybe in the future. When I can
Speaking of
like,
cons.
well, yeah.
Oh no, you go.
No, I said just when I can like better support myself, when I have more of like funds and stuff available for something like that. Goals. Yeah, exactly. Ghost Smoke has it there.
Oh yeah,
Maybe in the
definitely a
future.
goal. Speaking of cons, I'm for anyone that goes to cons, I will be attending ASIN for the first time. I've never attended an anime convention before, just because there weren't really any in the South, other than like maybe Dragon Con, but that's more of like a Comic Con. Um, don't. So if you happen to run into me, I'm gonna be bringing some Wemo stickers with me. So I don't know, come say hey.
Oh, that's lovely. That's so cool. I'm really happy for you, Warehouse. That's gonna be fun. LouisianaCon. Louisianime. Wow. That's a fun name to say. LouisianameCon. I like that.
And I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think Grapes will be in attendance to ASIN 2 along with me. So maybe you'll run into both of us.
Grapes VTuber. Grapes needs like one of those tripod things on wheels with like the little display where she's like on her VTuber avatar, and then you need to like cart her around, and she can do the meet and greet and stuff.
Yeah.
Like Iron Mouse, exactly. But yeah, like definitely that. Wow. We got a couple stinky gamers here.
A little spicy.
Yeah. Always funny when people just go to a podcast and just kind of write these things. I don't really care. Little do they know I even do this for a living. Yeah. No, we still kind of have to like to figure these things out. I'm luckily quite small still, so if I ever get like some sort of hate, I'm always I'm somewhat able to to respond to that. Like I'll be fine.
Yeah, thankfully I stream so like since I only stream maybe once a month or so, and I'm still relatively small, like thankfully the only like kind of like weird stuff I get in streams are just like the spam bots, you know?
Oh yeah, we have those too. It's always like, do you want to buy followers? Here's the link. Oh, those are like so jarring to me because I can't imagine it working. Like I can't imagine anyone who's like watching a stream just thinking, oh, I will click on this link and acquire more followers. Like I just don't. It must be working if they keep doing it, but right. I find that quite jarring that it does even work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like luckily the amount of hate that I've gotten is pretty limited. And again, I care really little, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely feel like at least I imagine just because like DJ streams, there's nothing to really like be aggressive about for real. At least on the smaller scales, I definitely feel like at least just from like what you've said and like what Grapes has said that like the VTuber like community, I don't know. Sometimes people are just aggressive. It's very interesting that has become a thing as VTubing has kind of evolved. I mean, VTubing has only been around for a handful of years now.
Yeah, since COVID, pretty much, I'd say. But yeah, Blake, that's really unfortunate that happened to you. That's a big yikes right there. No, but like even for me, like with VTuber hate, it's always really limited. It's always just kind of. I think this is like the first time someone has ever like quote unquote called me out for like being a VTuber. Like, what did they say? They were like, would your parents be proud? My parents know. My parents are proud. Like, like what kind of argument is this? But other than that, luckily I didn't have any hate like directed at me for, I don't know, my personality or anything like that. So I'm quite happy.
Right.
And I always find it really sad when I see that like hate raids are going around or people are attacked for like their, I don't know, their identity. I always find that really sad when that happens.
Yeah, I guess it comes with the territory because like VTubing is sort of like, I mean, I don't know. There's like a tribalism that comes from it. You know, people like have their dedicated VTubers that they follow and all that. And it's like, bro, you can watch multiple VTubers. Nothing wrong with that. Like support a bunch of VTubers at once. It's crazy. Like you can spread that support and everyone's happy, but people just don't really take it like that, I guess.
It's so weird to me that there are people who just kind of choose to be negative on purpose.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I don't get the mindset. Like, I know people who claim that they like to troll, and that's like, that's like the reason they go into certain communities and try to rile people up.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I could never do that. I don't have the patience for that, and I don't have the time for that. So, yeah, I don't know. I find that really bizarre, personally.
Yeah, it's just like that's just so much energy to invest in for like what? Like you're not really getting anything out of it by doing that. So, but I don't know. That's also just because I'm not a teenager on the internet anymore. I'm an adult and I don't really have time to care about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I remember when I was younger, I had an argument with someone on Facebook. It was a really heated argument. It was in a Yu-Gi-Oh group because I play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like such a heated argument. It was like if they said like something wrong, I replied to it, and then they kind of said like, shut up, woman, go back to kitchen, yada yada. And for some reason I took that really personally, and I started like arguing with them. And I had this like, I guess, an hour-long argument with them, just like back and forth, that didn't lead anywhere. And then later I talked to my partner at the time and just kind of, like proudly explained that, I argued them out of it. Like I had this like long conversation with them. And my partner said, wow, like you wasted so much time on that person. Like you wasted so much time on someone whose opinion of you you'll not change anyway.
Right.
And that really stuck with me. Like that's actually advice that I really did take to heart. And now when I see that people approach me with negativity and maliciousness in mind, I just block or time out like straight away. There's like no reason to argue with someone or trying to convince someone to like you. Really not worth it.
Yeah, like there's so many people on the internet now, and the ability to just press a few buttons and not have to like deal with them it's being able to block people has gotten way simpler over time. Like when it comes to like the content you see, I mean, like the algorithms are terrible now. Like everything is like abrasive and reactionary and inflammatory, but like at least at the end of the day, most social media you can at least curate to your own interests, even if that means you have to like sit there and like block a bunch of stuff and like block a bunch of tags or whatever you need to. Because I mean, ultimately, like yeah, all those people will still exist and be angry in their like own thing. But if you're not seeing it, it's not really affecting you. And I think that's the main takeaway that like social media needs to have on some people is that like you kind of have to curate it so you're not subjecting yourself to stuff that you don't want to see.
Like definitely that, because it's just like, for me, when I realize someone is trying to approach me in bad faith, I always try to remember that if I block them right away, or like I shut them off, I will forget about them in 20 minutes after it happened.
Oh yeah.
Like I will not remember this interaction if I take action, if I like, make the right choice. Because yeah, Ghost Smoke's right. The more you react, the more they get what they want, because that's exactly it. Like you cannot invite them into like your orbit. Yeah, do the grapes. We're ending now anyways. It's been 2 hours. So
Yeah, it's been a long one.
Yeah, our time has come to an end. I think I asked you the shouter question like 15 minutes ago or something. But it doesn't matter. It was a lovely time, and I'm really happy to have you on the show. We're not gonna rate anyone today. in case those people are still lingering and I don't want to send them to another person. So that's a bit unfortunate, but I'd rather not, you know, spread the bad eggs around. It's what it is. So
That's fair.
let's go to our nice ending screen, which I never get to use. Yeah, exactly. Back to the shenanigans. Yeah. Alrighty. Thank you for the lovely stream, everyone. I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see you next Monday. And thank you, Warehouse, for being such a good guest. Oh, Warehouse! Wow! Ghost
Well, thank
Smoke.
you, everyone.
I saw the message on screen saying Warehouse just subscribed, but yes, thank you, Ghost Smoke. Thank you! I appreciate it! Thank you. Yeah, that definitely makes me feel a bit better about what just happened. Thank you. Alrighty, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you on Monday. And Warehouse, I'm excited for the next mix. Everyone, yeah, check them out on Twitch. Check them out on SoundCloud. Please let me post the link real quick, because you can't post it since you're not the stream owner.
Oh, okay.
So let's see, Warehouse Radio. Yeah, I've set it that only I can post links in case someone's like
Trying to spam or something.
Yeah. I don't want that at all. So links cannot be posted except by me. Yeah, so here's the link. Please check them out on SoundCloud. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Goodbye, everyone! Ghost, you can't just... Thank you! Oh my god, thank you so much! Oh, thank you. It works, yeah, it does work. And I set it up that it has like an anime